Hello and welcome to my new video, how to draw a realistic eye step by step. In this video I will show you how to draw an eye using a 4B pencil starting from the very beginning. First step is to try and imagine the basic oval shape of the eye before you draw it so that you can place it on the page where you wish it to be. Once you have decided the position of the eye, sketch it in as a simple oval and then add an upper line to represent the upper eyelid and then the lower line to represent the thickness of the top of the lower eyelid. Next, it is time to draw the iris. It is a good idea if you make the top of the circle look like it's going underneath the top eyelid and the bottom of the circle of the iris touches or just goes underneath the rim of the lower eyelid. Now it is time to add a highlight to your eye. This will be very useful later on. Next, it is time to draw the pupil in the center of the iris. Try to make sure the highlight overlaps the pupil, as then you'll have the lightest and darkest areas of your drawing working well together. I now add a line to represent the thickness of the upper eyelid. And then on the right hand side of the eye, in the corner, I add a tear duct. This would be the corner of the eye nearest the nose. At this stage it's a good idea to look at your whole eye rather than parts of it and see if there's anything that you think needs changing to make it slightly better. We are already just under 2 minutes into the drawing in real time and we have got the basic eye shape all planned out. Once you are satisfied that you've got the basic shape of the eye, then we're going to start to add eyelashes one at a time, being quite forceful with the mark so that they don't need to be drawn each one more than once. With a 4B pencil, if you press down hard and exert more pressure with the pencil, you just get a darker line, and if you're softer, more delicate with the pencil, you get a softer, more delicate line. As these eyelash lines will stay in your drawing, it is good to be confident with the marks that you make. But at any stage, if you see something that needs changing in your drawing, just erase that part that you see needs changing and improving, and correct or improve that part, rather than starting your drawing from scratch. It's good to build on whatever you have. Now I start to go over some of the earlier lines with a darker line, particularly the upper eyelid and around the circle of the iris. And now it's time for some detail within the iris of the lines radiating from the center of the pupil outwards. Sometimes they're continuous lines, but more likely they're broken lines, quite complex shapes, which you can just indicate with a variety of different marks going from the center of the pupil to the outside circumference of the iris. The more of these marks that you put in the iris, the more detail your eye will show. For this drawing, which is quite a large drawing of an eye, it would be good, I think, to put quite a lot of detail in. But if you were doing an eye as part of a portrait of a person, then you could simplify this quite a lot, because obviously the eye would be much, much smaller than this sort of demonstration eye that I'm drawing now. When drawing a pair of eyes and a face, it is a good tip to draw both eyes together so that you draw part of one eye and then part of the other eye, and then you look at both eyes before you make a judgment about how your drawing's going. When building up detail in a drawing, it's always a good idea to look at the detail in relation to the rest of the drawing, so the detail works in itself, but it also helps the rest of the drawing work well. So by building up these marks, hopefully we're creating a drawing where the whole image is getting stronger because of the detail that we're creating in the center of the image. Drawing is a way of recording what you see, and so to improve my drawing I make sure that I look really carefully at what I can see in front of me. This is tricky to do because we always think that we know what we can see, but when you start drawing, you find that there are all sorts of shapes and connections that you didn't realise that were there. And so to draw an eye or a lemon or a cup, you start to discover all sorts of things which perhaps you had never noticed or seen before. That's one of the reasons that I enjoy drawing so much. When drawing shapes that repeat, like the shapes within the iris of an eye, I don't think it matters too much if you lose track of which bit you are drawing. As long as you look each time you draw, I don't think anybody's going to notice if you draw the same bit twice. But they might notice if you start drawing things which you can't actually see in front of you. So it's always a good idea to really look very, very carefully. Next, it is time to use the side of the pencil to create a soft mid-tone, not dark and not light, but somewhere in the middle, that you can shade over the detail that you've just put on the iris, so that the detail is still showing, but now it has a layer of mid-tone pencil on it, but not on the highlight of your drawing. The eyelid of your eye will create a shadow, which means that the top part of the eyeball will be in a darker tone than the rest of the eye. So we can shade that in now to indicate how the shadow of the top eyelid will cause this effect to happen. The shiny reflective quality of the iris and the highlight on the eye is starting to show through now. I think this is mainly because there are layers of tone of light and dark, and the paper which I'm using is quite bright white paper, and that's looking brighter as you put darker tones next to it. So we're not using any white, we're just making the things around the paper darker, and that's making the paper itself look brighter. It is now time to shade in the darkness of the pupil in the centre of your eye. This should be as flat a tone as you can make it, and it doesn't reflect any light at all. And now I have shaded in the pupil, I can start to develop the area around the eye. This is a stage in the drawing where you really want to look at your drawing as a whole thing and to see if there's any way that you can unify the drawing, or if there's anything that can be toned down or simplified so that the drawing works together rather than just pieces of the drawing working individually. So we're trying to unify the drawing at this stage. Starting to place in some tone to give the eyelid some form. So the lines that we drew at the beginning of the drawing can now become lines where a tone changes from light to dark. So on the right hand side of the eyelid it's become an area of tone, and then on the left hand side of the eyelid the tone is above the eyelid. We can continue to strengthen here so that the eye is not totally isolated. It's now in relation to the folds of skin around the eye. The more that I do this, the more dramatic that the image becomes, although the actual eye doesn't change. It's just a matter of changing the tone of the drawing around the eye to give it some sort of context within a face. This drawing took just under 9 minutes so far in real time. I start to speed up this drawing now to show you the various steps to get a full tonal range. I hope you enjoy this drawing and you have a go too, and see you next time.